Welcome into the greatest podcast in sports betting entertainment. My name is Tanner Kern, certified G, bona fide stud, and you can't teach that. In this right here, this is G Money, Grant Mitchell, and we are here breaking down the NCAA tournament bracket, all the surprises, the upsets, the dominations that we saw over the weekend, and you can't teach that. Bada boom, man of the people in the room. Grant, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing better than my bracket. I can say that. I think everybody's doing better than my bracket because I'm in the bottom 10% of all people out there. So my bracket wasn't necessarily as bad as my betting results because those are different, but it's not been the best start to the tournament for Grant. I will say that.
I think brackets are overrated. There's why I think brackets are overrated. I don't care about brackets as much. Like, I'm not a big bracket guy. I'm not like the $10 office challenge bracket guy. I'd rather just bet. I'd rather gamble on the games. I don't really care about how it's going to play out. And blah, blah. Again, it's a crapshoot. My girlfriend currently is in the 99th percentile bracket. She has picked literally every upset. She doesn't know anything about college basketball. Nothing. Literally nothing. And she's a 99th percentile. It's all a guessing game. So I'd rather just
my mom is in the 99th percentile for men and won't watch sports at all. It's just like a fun way to like get involved with everybody. I have one friend who probably has never watched a single basketball game in her entire life. She's won our group 3 of the last 4 years. And I think she's in first again. It's literally like the more you know about college basketball, the worse your bracket is because you know what should happen, but it's March Madness, so it doesn't happen.
Now, with that being said, though, I think the early rounds are tough to predict, but how the bracket is formed now, it's not surprising. You look at the East, you have UConn, San Diego State. Auburn getting knocked out, definitely a surprise, but we knew UConn was going to be there. Illinois, Iowa State, I thought they would cruise. UNC, Alabama, that was the matchup we pretty much everyone expected. Clemson, a little bit of a surprise. A lot of people were high on New Mexico, who just didn't even deserve to be in the tournament, it looked like. You were?
Yeah, I had New Mexico. I had them going to the Sweet 16, I believe.
But Arizona making it out there, like, that's not a surprise. Tennessee, Creighton, not a surprise. Purdue, Gonzaga, not really a surprise. NC State, Marquette, not a surprise to me in the sense of NC State. Like, they were just that Cinderella team that was going to continue to roll. They had a pretty easy matchup against, I mean, it came down to the wire against Oakland, but they had Texas Tech, who they were better than or playing better, and then Oakland, and then Houston, Duke. I mean, everything's kind of played out pretty standard outside of the first round went a little crazy. Second round seemed to, everything kind of got back into rhythm.
But it is almost a little weird to see all of the favorites make it through, though, because again, it's March Madness. Like, there should be 14 and 15 seeds in the Sweet 16, and it's been a lot of favorites. It's been a tournament for the big dogs.
Well, so yeah, like the 2 days ago, right, on Saturday, it was all favorites went 8-0 in the games. Like, that was wild to see because dogs were barking early in the tournament, and now it's just favorites. I think it is a little weird, but also I think the days of NIL are also like helping the favorites win because in the sense of they have more money to spend, they have better caliber players, and the underdogs just can't compete as much. You could also say if they get some money, they could compete, but big upset wise, like, I don't know about you, my biggest upset of the first and second round was definitely Yale beating Auburn, because watching Yale against San Diego State last night, it just came down to they made shots against Auburn that they weren't making against San Diego State. They're not a better basketball team in any way whatsoever.
Yeah, I had Auburn winning the national championship. So, I was surprised. We talked about it on the show. We both said that a lot of people were picking Yale, and we didn't quite see it. We didn't understand why. Well, I mean, I guess that's why. And to your point, Yale wasn't as good of a team overall as they proved on that one day, but this is what happens when you have a single elimination tournament. You just got to be making your shots for 2 hours, or not even making your shots. You got to play good defense, whatever it is. It's only 2 hours, and then you can potentially kick the other team out, and that's what happened. Auburn is a much better team than them, but they didn't play better on that day when it mattered.
Definitely not, and that makes UConn's path a lot easier. UConn versus San Diego State on Thursday night from TD Garden in Boston. We have a national championship rematch. UConn's a 9.5-point favorite. Like, it's warranted. Don't get me wrong. They could easily win by that. But I feel like San Diego State's going to come out, be a little more aggressive because of how last year went in the national championship game. I still don't think it makes a difference. I don't know if I want to lay 9.5 with UConn, but I don't want to take 9.5 with San Diego State either. What are you feeling on this game?
Yeah, I think you've got that. I think you've got that right. I don't know if I want to lay the 9.5. I don't know if I want to take the 9.5. UConn should win this game. Maybe parlay it if anything, but it's pretty terrible odds. So honestly, I wouldn't do that either. I think I would be laying with UConn if I had to, but I'm just gonna stay out of that. I don't feel great about it. But San Diego State, they did look good against Yale. They beat them by 30 points, and they do have that motivation from last year. So you never know.
Jaden Ledee, he looked really good last night. UConn 24-12 against the spread. San Diego State 13-20 against the spread in the Mountain West. So just something to look at there. UConn probably should make it all the way to the Final Four. Like, I'd be surprised if they didn't. They're minus 220 to win the East right now, which it's fair because I think if they were minus 150, people would just be absolutely hammering them and killing sports books. But still, I think there's definitely a little too much love for UConn sense of they could get knocked off. Anyone could get knocked off in this game.
Yeah, I agree. And you almost saw that with Houston against Texas A&M. The Aggies took him into overtime. Tyrese Radford was a beast. This his last game? This might be his last game. 27, 15, and 6. The Aggies scored a ton of, I think they broke 100 in their game before that in the round of 64, right? And so I was worried about Houston because like this Texas A&M team is hot. Buzz Williams he's a divisive coach, but in my opinion, he's a good coach. And just from the opening, like 5 minutes, you saw the intensity that A&M was bringing specifically on the boards. I think they were like 1 of 6 from the field to start the game, and they got 5 offensive rebounds. So they were playing ultra aggressive. I was worried that Houston was going to lose that game, and A&M actually won the second half, but got it to overtime. And then Houston ultimately brought it home. I think this is good for Houston. If anything, I think it is a reality check. And I think that it reminds them that, hey, Texas A&M's a 9 seed and they almost scored 100 points on our nation's best defense. So we got to be on our P's and Q's moving forward. But I still think Houston is a good team, but definitely a little bit of a wake-up call for them there.
Yeah, I like Texas A&M a lot. I like how they played in the first round against Nebraska. I mean, they absolutely dominated there. But when I look at this game, this is one that Texas A&M lost, right? Like, you were able to put up 95 points. I know it went to overtime, so you have a few extra frames there, but you were able to put up 95 points on one of the best defenses in the country. You scored 95 against one of the best defenses in the country. Like, you allowed a slow offense in Houston to score 100 points. Can't do that. Can't do that, expect to win. If Houston's scoring 100, most likely they're going to win because of how good their defense is.
Yeah, 100%. Another number 1 seed. I mean, we might as well talk about the 1 seeds. Purdue, they look good. Zach Edey had a first half double-double against Utah State, 23-14. They beat Utah State by nearly 40 points. I had Utah State potentially earmarked as an upset team because of how well they defend the 3. They started off the game okay, the first 5 minutes or so, and from that point on, straight downhill. Purdue goes 48% from the field from 3. Edey finishes 23-14. They look good. Purdue does look good.
Utah State was terrible. Like, it was close for about 8 minutes, and then Purdue just ran away with it. The Zach Edey show was fantastic. They look good. I don't know if I trust them in the Final Four or in the national championship game, but realistically, looking at the Midwest region, they should be able to get there. I don't see Tennessee or Creighton being that much of a challenge for them. This Gonzaga team is not the team that we've seen in years past. We've also seen them fall apart in the big game as we get to this part of the tournament. They're great getting to the Sweet 16, but they tend to let up at this point. So that's something to look at. I think Purdue easily wins the Midwest. I don't think Creighton or Tennessee is going to be an issue for them.
Yeah, Creighton almost lost to Oregon as well. You got to keep that in mind. So yeah, I think this is Purdue's to lose. Same thing as UConn. It's theirs to lose.
It's probably UConn's to lose even more, I would say. Like,
the tournament is probably UConn's to lose, honestly.
What are the national championship odds right now in FanDuel? UConn's plus 210, Houston's plus 550, Purdue's plus 600. So Arizona's plus 800. It's worth taking Purdue, Arizona, Houston at this point, because UConn at plus 220, I don't know if I would touch that.
Yeah, so I would actually I wouldn't back that Arizona pick. I've talked about it a few times already here. I've said it coming into the tournament. I worry about them a little bit. They won in the first round by 20 points against Long Beach State, but I think they were up 4 points going into halftime, and it was really close. It was tied for most of the first half. They had a strong second half. That game against Dayton, they hit a couple of clutch shots late, but Dayton played them really tough, and that's despite Arizona being a much better team than them. So again, I think Arizona's better than Clemson, and I think they should win this Sweet 16 matchup, but they're just showing a bit of holes, and I think that I just don't see them putting a run together and winning the whole thing.
I agree with that. I mean, I have UNC winning that. I was just reading off the top four, but UConn at plus 210 is not worth it. I like UNC at plus 1300 right now because I think they can beat Arizona, and then they're probably going to get beat by UConn in the Final Four, but you never know. So definitely the future odds, if you're getting in on them now, it's definitely a little late because you got much better value on pretty much all these teams. I think Tennessee's drifted back a little bit. Purdue is up to like plus 550. I think at one point now they're up to 6-1, but they probably look the strongest on that side of the bracket. I think Houston would have a tough time beating Purdue if we got that matchup in the Final Four.
I agree. I see. Well, I want to agree with you because I just don't. Nobody can guard Zach Edey. Obviously, he's like a matchup nightmare for them. But when I think back to some of the teams that they've lost to, they haven't necessarily had a crazy tall big man. Like Fairleigh Dickinson last year in the first round, I don't think they had anybody over 6'5", and they let Edey do his thing. He had like a 21 and 11, I think it is. He had a 20-point double. But Houston with their defense, they can trap him and bring their guards down, sink them down to help defend against him. And it might just be some weird defense. Like it might be something Purdue hasn't seen yet with the ability Houston has on the defensive end. So I think Purdue would be favored in that game, but I don't know. It might get weird. It might get weird there.
You got to make your running floaters. If you can make floaters against Purdue, you're going to be okay. That's how you got to get it over him because he's just such a big presence. You also got to get him moving. Like you can't just let him camp down and just swat shots. Like Klingon last night for UConn, he was fantastic. So much fun to watch. But those are two guys. Like Edey's a different beast than Klingon because he's a lot taller. Not a lot, but relatively speaking, I guess a couple, 4 inches, probably a lot more. So that's a big difference. Both those guys are fantastic with blocking shots. So you got to get them to move and you got to make them uncomfortable. So whoever's going to make Zach Edey uncomfortable, because I think they made shots again from the perimeter in their last game, but that team revolves around him. So if they get him out of the way and make him uncomfortable, that's when Purdue is susceptible to losses.
Yep, I agree with that. Any other big games that we want to talk about here from Saturday or Sunday?
I mean, Illinois showed up against Duquesne. This was going to be my kind of my moment where I quit college basketball betting. If Duquesne beat Illinois, I said that. I was like, Duquesne is not good. I watched this team not score for 15 minutes in the Atlantic 10 championship game, and they still won. That's how bad the Atlantic 10 is. And if they lose to Illinois, and luckily Illinois came out and took care of business, and everyone stopped acting like Duquesne was good, so that was fun. I said I would probably quit, and luckily Illinois revitalized me, so that was good. Iowa State struggled with Washington State a little bit early in that game. They found a way to pull away, so credit to them. That was not an easy matchup. Alabama, that 72-61, that does not reflect how close that game was against Grand Canyon. Like, I don't even know how Alabama covered. They were up by like 2 with a minute to go.
Yeah, they got a real test there from Grand Canyon, and credit to those guys. It's kind of amazing. The game finished with, I think the total is 170, and it finished in the 130s. That was the biggest shock for me.
Yeah, definitely. So Alabama against UNC. I like UNC. I think they're a more well-rounded team in that game. I don't think that will be that big of a trouble for North Carolina just because Alabama's defense has hurt them consistently all season. It's going to hurt them again at some point in the NCAA tournament. It almost hurt them against Grand Canyon. It didn't hurt them. It almost hurt them against Charleston. Like, you give up 96 points to Charleston. You can't do that.
Yeah, I agree with that. And back to your Illinois thing, I know they did just play Duquesne, and Duquesne is awful, but Illinois was really good to finish the year, and they're playing really good basketball at the start of this tournament. Like, this is a team that can still make a run here.
Yeah, Iowa State's plus 420 to win the East. Illinois is plus 600. I think those should be a lot closer because that could be anyone's game. Iowa State did not impress me at all against Washington State. I know they came alive late. They were so bad early in that game, and they're lucky that Washington State did not play well. Like, Washington State was, I think at one point, and I don't have these numbers in front of me, but at one point, I think Iowa State was like 0 for 7 from the field to start, and Washington State was like 2 of 9. So there were moments there where it's like, okay, Washington State really could have been up. I think they almost got up by 10 points early, but they could have been up 20. It could have been like a 20-6 game early on. And they credit to Iowa State. They stayed locked in, but Washington State could have buried them early and they didn't get it done. And that's why they ultimately lost.
Yeah, I agree with that. Obviously on Wednesday, we are going to be talking about the Thursday game. So probably going to save the picks, hold them out for that one as far as the actual betting picks. But, again, we did already touch on some of these. I think Arizona's got some holes. Clemson could be a team to look at. We both seem to be liking the way Illinois is playing. We both think North Carolina is more balanced than Alabama. And then we've got that UConn SDSU matchup that's kind of 50-50.
Yeah, I mean, 50-50 from a spread perspective.
Yes.
I think UConn should, from a spread perspective, I think UConn should cruise.
But yeah, I agree with that. And also, I do just one final thing here, I guess, with Klingon and UConn, just because it seems appropriate. If they match up against North Carolina, Baycott's not the tallest guy in the world, but he's very strong. He's hard to displace. Like that could just be a little something to throw UConn off their game a little bit because you're not going to dominate the interior the same way you normally do. UNC is also a very veteran team. They've got a lot of experience, especially with RJ Davis leading them. So that could be a weird matchup for UConn. It could be tough. It'll probably be their toughest of the tournament if that game does happen.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I agree with that. UConn can be beat by anybody on any given night. But when you just look at this team right now, like, okay, you got Tristan Newton, who's an All-American. You have Cam Spencer. You have Alex Karaban, who last year was more of a figure on this team than he is this year. Like, he's not a guy that's looked at to take the big shot. Last year, he was making big shots in the NCAA tournament. You got him. Then you have Donovan Klingon. Then you have Stephon Castle, who's a freshman, I believe, right? Yeah, he's a freshman. He's playing like he's one of the best Big East freshmen this season. Hassan Diarra, who's, spills Donovan Klingon a little bit. Like Samson Johnson, you have so many dudes that can just play and you can get minutes out of. So they have such a deep team. And I think you can neutralize Klingon. Like we've seen Klingon get into foul trouble, and that's when UConn really goes downhill. But they got so many guys that can make shots.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, UConn, again, they look like the best team they did all year. Nothing has really changed that so far. So if someone's going to beat them, it's going to be an upset.
Yeah, definitely. All right, Grant. Well, guys, make sure you tune in on Wednesday. We'll get you guys the March Madness picks for Thursday and Friday for the Sweet 16. And then on Friday, we'll be looking towards the Elite Eight and seeing who's going to the Final Four. So exciting stuff coming. Opening day is also on Thursday. We're going to have a ton of baseball content on the show moving forward. And we're still working on getting this over to our new YouTube channel. So when that happens, the show's going to change a little bit. But still, Grant and Tanner will be here every 2 days a week.
Yep. Absolutely. But guys, that's going to do it for this episode of Ride the Line. Make sure that you have hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like the video if you enjoyed. Drop some comments. Let us know who you think is going to win March Madness. And we will catch you all in the next episode of Ride the Line.